Hi guys, thank you for clicking on my video. Today I'm going to be talking about IPA transcription, and I'm talking in a little bit of a more low tone speech because that way it will be easier for you to hear what I'm actually saying and hear the actual qualities of whatever I'm talking about. So it is a little bit noisy outside today. I usually film at night, but bear with me a little bit. Yeah, I think I'm going to start off with this. So it's like, this is an assignment that I've had in the past. I'm just going to start out by transcribing it as if the word was, or the way that I say it. So you may transcribe it differently depending on what accent you have, or where you're from, regional, dialects, whatever. But in using my speech patterns and pronunciation, I'm going to transcribe them. So the first word we have is house, and it's written here. These are all, we listened to an audio and transcribed the speech and speech errors of a person. So some of them are right, some of them are purposefully incorrect. But anyway, so house, we have anything that is transcribed into IPA is actually started with a /. So, and then we have the diphthong ow, so we'll put a little umbrella over it, and then house. Next we have door, d, and then that or sound is a vocalic R, so it's with an open O, and then or door. However, you can see here that the simulated client was could not produce that vocalic R, did not produce that vocalic R, and pronounced it as door. And you hear that a lot, especially with little kids. Door. None of it should be pronounced door. Next we have pig. I is written like this, and then g is just looking like the client. Also in this word said p-i-k, pick, instead of pig. So that was an error. I'm also going to call all of these just errors because I'm not in the position to, make any diagnostic decisions or anything, so I can't call it a actual speech delay because that would require an assessment. So for what we're going to call them today is an error. Next we have cup, and that's k. And then we have carrot, which is schwa, but when it has stress on the syllable, so cup. And the simulated client also pronounced that correctly. Then we have boy, which was said correctly. And this is a I wrote this incorrectly whenever I did the assignment 3 years ago, but it should have a little umbrella over it. Boy, because is it a diphthong? And then we have apple. So, pull. I would argue that that's a syllabic L. Apple, because it has no vowel sound in between that. However, we'll just call him Simi for simulated. However, Simi said apple. So we had an error in his L production there. And then we have go, which is pretty much written verbatim. And then duck, we have a carrot there, emphasized schwa, carrot. And then quack, which he also produced correctly. Quack. And then table. That's not right. I wrote that incorrectly. I guess this wasn't graded. Or even if I'm not sure. We learn from our mistakes. So te is going to be like this. Te, b. Then we have another syllabic L. Table. I think you're supposed to write the L all the way down to the line. I just make space for the thing for some reason. Narrow transcription. Okay, table, but he said tabo, which is an error in the ol sound. Then we have monkey. This is like the ng sound. Monkey. Monkey. He pronounced that correctly. And then we have hammer. Okay. There's a rule about this because of the nasal consonant being after that. I'm a little bit unsure. Right here, I wrote it as like an ha, but because there's a nasal after that, that can change the quality of the one before it. Ham. Okay. I think, don't quote me on this. I think I'm just gonna write it. I'm gonna write it how I hear it. Because I forget the rule. So sorry about that. Ham. And then is just a schwa. So it's a schwa, but with like a little attached to it. Yeah, it's a schwa. And he said it hamo. If it were a schwa there, I'd be like hamo, but I wrote hamo. So maybe he said it Himmel. Here we have fish. And then watch. This is a combination of t, sh, watch. So if you watch my IPA video, then I explain these better. But where? Spider. Sp. Oh, we have an I diphthong. D. Schwar. But the Simi said spidol. So that was an error. And then we have web, which just looks like the word web in a funny font. But as in the symbol for it is like an epsilon. Almost. Then drum. So some people might write this differently, but I was taught to write ers like this, and then the R trill that you might see in like Spanish, like r. You write that as like a regular R, but for now, this is how I was taught to write sounds. Der. This was pronounced, and it was an error. So he said dwum, instead of drum, and then plate. And knife. Then shoe. Yeah, this is just like this. This is how it should be pronounced, but the Simi added an S to the end, saying like shoes. Shoes? Well, I wrote down that he said shoes, but maybe that was an error on my part. Maybe I should have written shoes with a Z after that, but I don't know. This was a long time ago. And then slide. We have another diphthong here. Slide. Okay. From now on, I'm going to just write the ones that were produced incorrectly, or the errors written here. So if I keep writing every single one, it's like just repeating what is already written. So here we have slide, which is correct. We have swing, which is correct. And then we have the Simi said guitar. Yeah, he said guitar. Again, that vocalic R error, and it should be pronounced git. And then R has another kind of special thing about it, so it's going to be written like this, just like a rule. Whereas usually this would be hot, like ah, as in like hot, but because it's right before that it changes the sound, so guitar. Then we have lion. Then Simi pronounced it as Cheya, Cheya, Che, Cheya. I'm having a hard time not putting like that ya sound in it. Cheya. Which is an error, so and then there's another little rule about this, which is we have to write air like this. Okay, we have soap, which is correct, soap. Glasses, which is correct. Tygo, Tygo. G. And then is gur is like a schwa. Tiger. Puzzle is correct. Finger is an error, so. And this is what I was talking about earlier with sometimes nasal consonants can affect the vowel before it, so usually you might write this as like E, like this, finger. You might think it's that, but because of the nasal after it, it's actually a I, but it gets moved to the back, so it sounds more like, honestly, I'm not quite sure why we don't just write it the way it sounds, but that's just how I was taught. So finger. Okay. Then we have ring, but they said it as wing. I just made a mistake there. That's okay. Let's say we were writing the word wing. That would be the correct IPA for wing, which I wrote incorrectly here, but what it actually should be is ring, like this. Then we have thumb, elephant, elephant. So that needs to be elephant. Needs to be Okay, it's getting hard for me to write down here, so I'm going to move up here. Vacuum, chevaux, so that would be written cheval with a syllabic L, shovel, teacho, zebra, zebra. Okay, I was just making sure it wasn't, the emphasis wasn't on it. Dewaf, so there are two errors here. Giraffe, how I would say it, giraffe would be schwar, and then okay, vegetable, vegetable, so we have an error here. This is an emphasized schwa, so it becomes a caret. Brushing, blue, yellow. I think for the rest of them, I'll just kind of talk through them so you can move on to the next thing. Puedo. So those are two errors with the ers. Fog. There's an error with the Queen. R error. That. Leaf. Cookie. Cheese. Pajamas. A pajama. Is that right? Oh, okay. Pajama. Okay. Whoever said this said pajamas. I say pajamas. So this is correct for what I heard, but it's just different from how I pronounce it. Teeth. Princess. So there's another R error. Crown. An R error. Twuck. Error. Wed. Another error. Juice. Zoo. I guess the client put in another S on that. Stos. So I'm not quite sure what I heard on the audio, but stos is what is written there. That's quite a bit wrong. I'll write that just for the sake of, because it's so, I don't know. And then R has a special rule, so it's like this star. That's how it should be written. 5, 7. So, there's just another section about like figuring out which process it is. Like, what are some of the common denominators, figuring out that. I was thinking about going through another one of these, but I think that was quite enough. If you want to see another one, just leave a comment. Otherwise, I have some in class practice that we can practice reading. Oh my goodness, yeah. I don't remember any of this. I remember doing this in class, but it was a long time ago, so I'll just kind of sound it out. I think, so we put a little apostrophe looking guy on the multisyllabic words that on the syllable of stress, so the syllable has emphasis to it. We have eyelash. We have wipeout. We have highway. Oh, I just remembered, yeah. So for a sound that is influenced by that nasal consonant after it, you write a little tilde over the vowel that is influenced. So that makes sense. Okay, I forgot about that. Landscape. Eyesight. bathhouse, bathhouse. Music, music. Chasing, chasing. Itching, itching. Banking. Jelly bean. Oh, sorry, jelly bean. Choosing, choosing. Yahtzee. Mother. Murder. Wait. Oh, annoy. Like to annoy someone. Buffalo. Cologne. Thundering. Amuse. Thanks. Fuming. Mischief. Chinatown. Joyous, joyous. Younger. Join. Yeah, I think I'm going to stop there. If you want to read through the rest of these, you can. I'll give you a clean frame to pause on if you want to get some practice, I guess. But that will be all for my video. Thank you for watching, and if you have anything to say or anything you're curious about or anything you want to see, just leave it in the comments. Thank you.